That ability to imagine a better future, to imagine that things can get better and I can do it. And I might not know all the steps right now. I might not know how that will happen, but it's possible and I think I can do it. That's massive, especially in the very early stages of like a recovery journey.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the HSE Talking Health and Wellbeing podcast. Today we're talking about youth mental health and youth health more generally with Spun Out's Joseph Morning, who works as their Head of Learning and Curriculum. You're very welcome, Joseph.
Hi, Fergal. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to be talking in depth about your Spun Out Navigator tool and other resources that Spun Out have created as part of their work, specifically to support safer conversations online about suicide, self-harm and eating disorders. And this is all part of work that the HSE has been supporting in the digital mental health space. Just last month, together with the Department of Health, launched Digital Mental Health Strategy as part of Sharing the Vision. And for over 10 years now, the HSE have been supporting digital mental health, and it's really seen as a necessary way forward to get to scale, to address inequalities and address the issue of access. Spun Out has been a key partner in developing tools like this over recent years, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Our focus is on the digital world, and we do that in a lot of different ways, kind of through our websites, through social media is a big way for us to reach young people directly. I think it's really encouraging to see this increased focus on the role that digital solutions can play in supporting youth mental health and just everyone's mental health. So we were really happy to see these publications coming out, seeing a digital mental health strategy. As you say, this work has been going on for a long time and it's kind of happening in the background, but it's great to have a document that we can all point towards. And also it outlines some really good values that should underline all digital solutions. So it talks about things like co-design and involving service users. It talks about standards and regulations, but also the digital security that has to lie behind things like this and people's right to privacy and that sort of thing. It's great to have that to ensure that the quality is there in these products that we're producing to help.
Yeah, and listeners may be familiar with Balance and Stress program. We had 2 episodes focused on that earlier in the year. And of course, the HSE has My Mental Health Plan accessible for everybody. But today we're going to speak specifically about your resource, and the Navigator tool is one of the first ones we want to talk about. Can you introduce our listeners to that?
Sure. In a nutshell, Navigator is a free and anonymous tool. So it takes 3 steps to help people find mental health information and support. So it's Ireland-based and you get results that are kind of tailored to you. So in simple terms, Navigator is a website. You answer 3 questions and you get a collection of tailored results. And these results come in a number of different forms. So if you're looking for information, if you're looking for real life stories on a certain topic, if you're looking for support services, activities, or even books, podcasts, and apps, they're all contained in Navigator. We cover a range of different mental health topics as well.
So this was just launched in the middle of last year.
Yeah. So we launched in June. So we've been running a number of months now, which has been really encouraging. We've just had a big focus. As you'll understand, any new tool that you develop, there's a big focus on just making people aware of it, getting it in front of people and letting them know that this is a new tool that they can access and that they can use.
Our big signpost in the HSE is yourmentalhealth.ie, and that's the access point for the My Mental Health Plan. But if you encourage anybody to go onto the Navigator, just by looking around the room, there's both their digital literacy and their mental health literacy, isn't you?
Absolutely. A lot of it is just knowing that it exists, that it's a support there. In that exact moment, you might not have a question right now that you want some support with. The idea that knowing that it's there, seeing how it is and knowing that you can come back to it or that you can share it with someone who might need it, that's really important. And hopefully you'll know yourself, tools like this, hopefully it seems really simple on the outside and then there's a lot of development and curation that's happening behind the scenes to make sure that it's helpful for people.
I'm sure there is. I know you had a multidisciplinary team working on this and the HSE has been working with you on it, but it must have taken a long time to develop it up to make it look so user-friendly and seem so usable to the Joe blogs coming across it.
Yeah, there was a lot of voices involved in it, which I think is one of the strengths of Navigator. So we had a steering group that was interdisciplinary. We also had a youth advisory group that was helping guide it as well. So real young people were involved in the development of this from the very beginning. And I think that shows. I think that comes across whenever you use the tool. We also had done there was reviews of academic research as well to decide what this tool should look like and how it should function, what works well and what service users need and kind of benefit from. So there was a lot of work in that space to get it to launch, And the other thing is that there's also just a lot of curation work. So anything that goes on Navigator is handpicked by real people. in spun out, So we thought that that's the best way to really.
You don't have an AI in the background there just pulling stuff
There's
off
no
the web.
AI. It's actually, she's called Mariah. No, we have real people who are picking this content, reviewing it to make sure that it's accurate and trustworthy. And that's one aspect of it, but also that it's relevant to young people's needs. And we also have any information that we're producing for Navigator, it goes through like a validation process. So subject matter experts review it, and then real young people review it as well, so that we have this double support, double feel safe, that we know that what we're making is both accurate and relevant.
But I'm impressed by the scope of it. If you're looking to have a single national information source for youth mental health support, it's what every parent would want to be out there. It's what a lot of young people maybe don't realize they might need at some stage until they really need it. But that's a very broad brush of things, isn't it? There's so many things in that.
It is. In that way, Navigator isn't finished. We did youth surveys to look at what content we should have on Navigator. And we really had to prioritize in the earlier stages of like, okay, well, these are the topics that are being asked for most, but we're continuing to develop new resources to add to Navigator. So it's very much like a living, growing thing. So at the minute we're working on, we say pathways because it's a decision tree. You answer questions and you end at different results. But we're adding new pathways through that journey on grief, trauma, PTSD, and psychosis. They're ones that we're really focusing on at the minute. But we're going to continue to expand and kind of add new things, because the idea is that's what it's like. The internet is full of information, and a lot of the time, a lot of us do start with an internet search. That's how our search, if we're looking for information or support around mental health and well-being, it usually does start with like an online search now for a lot of people. But there's problems with that. The benefit is it's immediate. You can get all of these results right away. But then the payoff is how accurate or trustworthy is this information. Sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference between the good stuff and the bad stuff. So that's where Navigator comes in. We recognized there was a need there because you need to be able to cut through the noise and to know that any results I'm getting in Navigator has been through this process. I can trust it. It's that kind of trust element, so it gives an alternative. So it recognizes that a lot of us are going to continue to go to the internet to get answers for our questions, but we can make tools that make sure that those answers are the right ones.
And what specific age group is it for now? Because I think a lot of parents will be listening here today to this type of podcast. So the age group, let's talk about that.
So at Spun Out, our core age group is 16 to 25-year-olds. So you're talking that kind of like slightly older adolescent and into young adulthood. What I will say is Navigator's designed to be really like open and accessible for all, so you're not going to be asked your age whenever you come to the site. Very much anyone can use it and can find information and supports that will probably be relevant for them. But whenever we're curating our information, curating supports, services, that's the age group that we have as our core.
And how did you get the co-design? I know you said you had some people on your steering group, but what kind of feedback did you get back from the young people that you were able to build on? You see it's so referenced in every part of society. You need to think about the young people, or what about the young people? But how did you consider the young people? You had them on the group. What did you listen to, or what did they tell you?
Yeah, so we set up like a youth Navigator steering committee for this and involved them from the beginning. So Navigator was designed from scratch, and that gave us a great opportunity. Now, we were lucky that we have youth action panels across the country. So we have networks of young people who do feed into all of the work that we do, kind of in a wider sense and Spun Out. So people from our action panels were able to volunteer to take part in this like smaller, more focused group. And we were able to involve them right from the beginning around like what Navigator should be able to do, how it should look, how it should feel, what information should be on it. So they were able to tell us, for example, if we wanted to know, should you be able to make an account? Is it something that you should log into? And they were really clear that no, that this should be a quick and anonymous thing, because that kind of immediacy, but also the anonymity is really important whenever it comes to things like this. So not having a login screen in between you and the information was important. It was things like that. They told us how it should look. They were able to see the logo and the colors and things like that before that was chosen. And they also were able to feed into the information, the questions, so we have these 3 questions that you answer and you kind of move through. So they were able to feed into what should those questions be? Are these clear? Does this make sense? Is this a logical flow from this to this? So they were really involved in everything. And then, of course, back to that youth-proofing element of before any content that we made that was new for Navigator went through that youth validation process. We call it youth-proofing. The other thing is we have a lot of young people from our volunteer network who have shared their lived experience, and it lives on Navigator now. So around a lot of the topics that we have, well, all the topics that are on Navigator at the minute, you can look for real stories on those topics, and you'll find either articles or videos featuring young people who are talking about their lived experience of these things in their own words, because you can give the information, you can give the practical how these things work on paper, and then to hear how these topics impact people's real lives and to hear how real people cope with them and find ways to move past them or deal with them and continue on to thrive. There's a unique value in that too.
There is absolutely a unique value in that. I think that can't be overstated. There's nothing so powerful as to puncture that stress balloon for somebody that thinks I'm in this problem and nobody's ever experienced this, like this unique problem. And then to hear somebody relatable saying, oh yeah, well I had that problem, this is what I did, and my mother was worried about it. I looked at some of your videos and you're showing people that have been through the woods and come out. That's so affirming for somebody that's in the woods. You know what I mean? So,
that can sound wishy-washy sometimes, but it's really not. That ability to imagine a better future, to imagine that things can get better and I can do it. And I might not know all the steps right now. I might not know how that will happen, but it's possible and I think I can do it. That's massive, especially in the very early stages of like a recovery journey. It's so crucial.
Yeah, it's a very powerful message for parents as well. I was just involved in a set of conversations at a party recently where somebody was saying, oh, my child this and my child was struggling with that. And they had been talking to somebody else at the same party about their child that had come through a struggle.
Yeah.
And they were saying, oh, it's so great to hear about, Mary over there. But it was doing the exact same thing. It was like relatable, understanding, and there's hope. The parents can be under so much stress when there's any issue with the child. So the child feels that they're struggling with something, but the parent's stress they can go off the Richter scale. And interestingly, like I was saying to you earlier, our most popular podcast of 2025 was designed for parents about supporting teenagers around the issue of anxiety, which is just one of a myriad of things and can be related to a myriad of things that Spun Out is directly trying to impact as well. Isn't that fair?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think for parents, it can be so anxiety inducing. No one wants to see their young person going through a difficult time, and I think it can come with this instinct of like, oh, I have to do something and I have to do something now, but I don't necessarily know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't want to say the wrong thing. And part of it is recognizing that almost everyone will go through challenges in their adolescence. For the vast majority of us as well, that'll be temporary. We'll get supports and we'll figure out ways to cope and to process and to move on. So absolutely, it's great for a parent to be like, I want to help. I want to be involved in this. I want to know what I can do. That's why I think a lot of the resources that we provide at Spun Out are really relevant to parents as well and can be a really good way to learn more about these topics and feel a little bit more equipped for some of these conversations. But also there's an element of this of trusting your children that they have this ability to get through difficult things.
I was going to ask you about the name Navigator, because navigate is the term that we often use when you say, oh, we want to help young people navigate this or navigate that. I'd be just curious to hear where the title came from or how you came on that title of the program.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it does come down to that. At Spun Out, we have a real ethos of giving young people the information and the support that they need to thrive. So it's very much that we're not making any decisions for anyone. We think young people, in as far as they can, should make their own decisions, and we should be supporting them to make more informed decisions. I think whenever you have the right information and the right guidance and support, you can make the right decisions for yourself. So Navigator is very much that idea of empowering the people who were using Navigator was very important to us. They're coming, they tell us what they want support with, and we'll give them a curated collection of results, and then they can do whatever they want with those results. It's up to them. We just want to be in the spaces where young people are, providing information and support that might be helpful for them.
Just recently, this week, you've heard Alex Cooney from CyberSafe Kids highlighting the case in America where, out of concern about the addictive nature of some of the apps and some of the things that are out there that young people are spending potentially too much time on screens, there's an unhealthy element to it, but we won't be able to get supports without taking that digital route. We have to kind of go to the space where they're at. That's fundamentally what you're saying there. You're trying to empower using a different web of digital resources or positive information to support the community.
Yeah, the internet is vast. I think at its heart is a space where people interact with one another, and there are lots of positive, negative, and neutral impacts of that. any of us, young people included, can encounter harm when we're in online spaces. Like that can happen, but there is a lot of really valuable resources out there as well, developed by organizations who have really good expertise in-house, who are really well connected to experts in other fields and are able to produce things that are genuinely helpful to young people. And what we ran kind of a survey when we were leading up to Navigator to look at like how young people want to access information and support, what's relevant to them. And autonomy was like the number one thing. They want to be able to find supports independently, to go out and say, this is what I need support with, and then get information themselves. So that kind of immediacy and autonomy were two things that came up. And we knew that that had to be built into Navigator, rather than trying to preempt and tell young people what they need. They can tell us and then we can respond to it.
That reminds me of one of the points that was made, and it's kind of the second part of the conversation I want to have with you now around the safer conversations online. That curriculum, that's fundamentally your job. You're building the curriculum for Spun Out. So there's a very clear teaching role there in a way. But one of your speakers, Charlie, said there was wild west of information on the internet. And when they were struggling looking out, they were finding all sorts, and they kind of got down a very dark place that they couldn't get out of. That's scary, isn't it?
Yeah. Charlie's a member of our volunteer network, and we have a video where they're telling their story, part of their mental health journey, but also about their time online and how online resources or online information and content impacted them at different points in their journey in both negative and positive ways. And I think it just really captures the complexity of mental health and the internet and social media. It is really, really complicated. But the thing is, that's where young people are. So in my role, I develop the Spun Out Academy, which is like an online learning platform. So it has courses, different courses, self-directed, totally free, that young people or anyone can take to build skills that support mental health and well-being in one way or another. So it's very focused on building personal skills to navigate just all the different topics that can have an impact on our mental health. And the latest course that we've published is Safer Conversations Online. And it's an interesting one because it's very focused on social media platforms in a way that some of the other courses aren't as much. This is something that we developed with the support of the HSE to recognize that more and more so people are talking about mental health in general on social media. It's not just subject matter experts. This is a conversation that's being had by everyone, and people are having it by making posts. They're having it in comment sections. They're having it by the content that they share and the things that they interact with. And we see that in many ways as a really positive thing and a really positive move forward for all of us. But there are certain topics in particular, and the ones that we focused on were suicide, self-harm, and eating disorders, where we need to be handling them with extra care and sensitivity if we want to have conversations about them in online spaces. And rather than telling people, just don't talk about these topics, we wanted to develop a resource that would give guidance. And it's like, if you want to talk about these, talk about them in these ways. These are the things to keep in mind. These are the things that could be risky to yourself, could be risky to other people that you're sharing these online spaces with. So the idea is to equip people so that they actually feel more confident in having these conversations.
Yeah, they are very sensitive issues. The avoidance or the putting your head in the sand. And I looked on Spun Out Academy. Yeah, it looks great. Like, it presents really clearly and inviting. You can learn something positive here. How was your engagement going with that? What's your reaction to that been like?
Yeah, people have been responding to it really well, which is great to see. Yeah, it's interesting because taking an online course isn't the same as interacting with a social media post, watching a video.
There's so many different types of content, and taking an online course is, there's a bit of commitment. You're asking, you can drop in and out. You've made it as you can do whatever you want with it and you'll get something out of it. But it is to take a bit of a level of commitment, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. It is a commitment for people, and we really recognize that. And we, first of all, tried to design it to be as easy to use as possible so that there's not many barriers there, but also that it's as engaging as possible. So kind of similar to your other stuff, you get concise information, there's interactive and kind of reflective activities so you can apply these things to your own life. But also we have really interesting videos from subject matter experts, and then we have videos of real young people sharing their experience as well along the way. So you get a nice kind of well-rounded experience. You get lots of different types of content that you can engage with. And also we've been working to look at the different partnerships that we can build. So finding the right contexts where people can take courses like this as well. So an example of that would be in Youth Reaches. We had linked in with Youth Reaches and we took some of the highlights of our content and turned them into a course that was specifically aligned to like the senior cycle SPHE curriculum and things like that. So finding all of the different ways that these resources now can be applied has been really interesting to kind of see what are other things that people are doing and can we add a little module onto that to kind of enhance it, to kind of add on some extra learning.
In terms of you create these tools, the Navigator tool or the Safer Conversations Online, by virtue of creating them and getting some engagement, even small amounts of engagement, you're learning already by the engagement, aren't you?
Yeah, feedback is really important for all of this. It's very much ongoing. It's always going to be ongoing. I think that's because young people's needs will change over time.
Yeah.
So we need to be continuing to listen and continuing to adapt and tweak and change. And the feedback that we get is really, really valuable. You know, we collect it across both platforms. So like, for example, going back to Navigator, I was talking about the trauma, PTSD and the psychosis pathways that we're developing at the minute. That came from the feedback form on Navigator. These were topics that were flagged by users being like, I would have really liked information on this. So it helps us, while we might know, yes, that's on our long list of other topics that we want to develop anyway, that helps us prioritize. We're like, okay, people are asking for this now. Let's prioritize this. Let's get this produced next.
Geez, that must give you a good sense of satisfaction that not only are you serving an existing need, but you've got a medium through which you can continue to grow and respond and be kind of nimble in some ways.
Yeah.
I presume that a lot of the topics that'll be raised, Spun Out isn't new to those topics, but you have some content on it in different formats, but you'll have to create something that's going to fit into the Navigator too.
Yeah, we try to do a lot of listening. So when people think about Spun Out, they think, oh, they have youth action panels and that's how they're listening to young people. And we absolutely are. And the action panels are core to everything that we do. But we try to not be limited to just that either. So we look at like academic literature, youth mental health, that's still young people sharing their experiences and their voices. They're just being platformed in a different way. Looking at trends that are coming through on social media, we try and stay on top of those and we do kind of like weekly feedback sessions where we look at like, oh, well, what are people searching for this week or what's coming up in the news or what's coming up? What are the trends that young people are doing on social media? You know, we look at that and then through our different feedback mechanisms, like feedback forms, like surveys in the academy, but also like what are the search terms that people are using to reach spunout.ie. So we have all of these different pathways to listen to youth voices. That's helpful for anyone to think of. There's never just one way to keep your finger on the pulse and be tuned into the needs of the people that you're supporting. The more sources of information you can draw from, the better, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, well, look, it's been really interesting talking to you. Do you want to give the signpost to Navigator and highlight again where the people come across the Safer Conversations Online?
Yes, you can find Navigator by going to spunout.ie/Navigator. And then you can access our Safer Conversations Online course and all our other courses on the Spun Out Academy, which is spunout.ie/Academy.
And just to highlight for the listeners again, like I did earlier in the episode, the My Mental Health Plan on the HSE for Adults is accessible through yourmentalhealth.ie. And you'll also find some of our online cognitive behavioural therapy programs such as Balance and Stress and others by HSE and partners through the yourmentalhealth.ie portal. So, Joseph, thank you very much for joining me today and for sharing all that information from Spun Out.
It was a pleasure. Thanks, Virgo.
And to the listeners, thanks for tuning in today. Please share the episode with a friend, colleague, or family member that you think would get value out of today's information on youth health and digital mental health supports. I'd like to thank Joseph Morning for joining us today. He's the Head of Learning and Curriculum Development in Spun Out. If you'd like to get more information about HSE Health and Wellbeing, you can access our website. We're on LinkedIn and X, and you can sign up to our Ezine by emailing us at healthandwellbeing.communications@hse.ie. Thanks for listening to another episode of the HSE Talking Health and Wellbeing podcast.